And actually, we started out with 3x5 note cards. That's the only way you can transmit the information. And the local real estate office would produce them. You go pick them up and you'd put them in your shoebox and you kind of knew the inventory. Then they progressed to MLS books, which were distributed once every 10 days. So they're always outdated when you got them. So you drive around and you'd see a for sale sign. You'd call on your two-way radio back to the office. You'd say, hey, I just saw a sign. What is this? They'd call the office and you'd go show it, knock on the door and show it.
Welcome to Building Bellingham. I'm your host, Leo Cohen. Season 2 is starting off a little different than Season 1. We're not in the studio and our conversations are live streamed onto the Building Bellingham Facebook page before they make their way here. We're a little rougher around the edges, but the core is the same. Honest conversations with local entrepreneurs, talking about challenges, failures, and the effort it takes to build a successful business. Join me as we dive into the story behind one of Bellingham's biggest brands.
But anyway, I passed it when I got my license when I was 21. I'm 76, so I've been in the business or license for 55 years. A lot has changed. I started out with a company called Nicholas Jern's Company. That was real estate and insurance. I was the youngest guy in there, of course. And then later on in 1972, I bought half of Kelstrup Realtors. Arnold Kelstrup that started it was, his health wasn't the best. So I joined his partner, or his son-in-law, Cal Leenstra, and we were partners for, 16 years or so. And then I started the Muljat Group in 1988. But it's been good, a lot of changes, I'll say.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you how we sold a house back then compared to how we do it today.
I think, for those that are listening, would you mind telling us what a house sold for 55 years ago in Bellingham?
I remember selling my grandmother's house when she passed away on Jager Street for, it was a 2-bedroom with a basement, had a wine cellar, a nice little 2-bedroom, 1 bath, had a kitchen nook. I remember it to this day for $15,500. That house. Okay,
so for everybody watching, don't have a heart attack right now. A house in Columbia selling for $15,500. And what were interest rates like at that point? I mean, are they?
I forget, 6 or 7, maybe. I forget.
So not terrible, not as bad as they got, but definitely. Yeah. I think the 15.5, that's like an escalation increase at this point.
Yeah, right.
That wasn't a commission. That was the purchase price for it.
That was the purchase price.
Yeah.
Wow. House is probably worth $500,000 today.
Probably, or more potentially. So yes, 55 years ago, you get your license. Progressing forward to that point where you made a decision to start your own company, been partners with others in this local economy here, and you made a decision to start your own company. What was that like for you, that many years in the business? What was that moment like?
It was fun. It was, there was actually some other people. When I had sold my interest, I stayed there for about 4 years, and until I opened up the Muljat Group. There were some other people thinking about opening up a new concept in the real estate business. So I attended the meetings, listened to them, and they were all a little afraid just to jump out and do it. So after about the 3rd meeting, I said, well, I'll start an office. I've got a little experience in it. And so I did, just that quick, and started the office. Some came with me, some didn't, of that initial group, but it worked out great. Built a building a year later, and we're still there at 510 Lakeway, right down the street from the old building that Troy happens to have listed today.
Full circle. Full circle.
Yeah.
Okay, Frank, you had this confidence, and both of you guys have this confidence about you. You have this vision of how things should be done and how well it should be done, the quality. For you, having people that originally were maybe with you at the previous company, Frank, that said, I'm not in, versus some people said, we're in. What's that like for you as you're jumping out and taking this risk as an entrepreneur to have people go, not interested, not into it? Was it a personal thing, or was it, the vision's here, I'm going for it?
I think people sometimes are just afraid to make a move, wherever they are, company-wise. I mean, it's hard. I mean, a lot of people feel comfort zone. They hate to go, but I was fortunate to have some really good people come with me at that time. And then after I'd opened up, joined me in the next few months. I mean, the office was kind of designed to have like 22 private offices, and it filled up in a hurry. That was nice. And like I say, it was really important to have good people. And I did have some good people, really good, and with me for a long time. Kurt Gill's dad was with me for 25 years. Scott Talbot, John Houston, there's a lot of people that are still with the company. Some have passed on and retired, but it's a good feeling to have people come and like what you're doing and like the concept and believe in what you believe in. It's a real good feeling.
How do you find good people? And I know there's a big spectrum to that, and it's kind of an open-ended question there, but were you just doing your thing and the right people were attracting to your life, or were you actively seeking how did that work out for you?
I was actively seeking, and the people that came were actively seeking. Wanted other people that were, high producers. It was kind of geared for a high producing office. Some people that weren't high producers were kind of intimidated to come over, but it worked out good. And they had to have experience, play the game, and those that wanted the challenge came over. I don't know. It worked out really good. Really good.
First 100% shop too. That was a big market trend where the broker had kept a significant portion of the commission back in those days, Leo. So was not uncommon to see 50 or even 70% going to the broker.
Yeah.
Wow. So. And you guys thought about it in a different way. Well, Frank, at that point, and you guys have maintained that too, looking at it from the perspective of, and for those people that aren't as much plugged into the real estate world, we're talking about the option of a desk fee or a cap, meaning that you pay a certain amount to the brokerage every single month or pay per deal. And so instead of just having 50 to 70% going to the managing broker, it was a much more reasonable, affordable way to do business, it sounds like.
Yeah. And those that were high-end producers loved it, because they paid a less desk fee and got more of the commission, and it attracted those that did that. It was good concept. Has worked all the time. Yeah.
And for you guys, one kind of reoccurring theme that I've heard from you guys time and time again is there's this, it's not exclusive in the fact that you guys you don't want to accept people, but it's more so you're creating this standard of who operates the best there. And it's someone that's, has quality, morals and ethics, does good business, high producer. And it's almost like if other people, don't want to be a part of that, that's okay. But it's the right people that fit into that family essentially. And it sounds like that's been the way that you've done it since day one.
Yeah, it has. And it's continued that way. And it's hard to seek the good people, Yeah, I look back, it was a great concept and worked out good. Then along came the younger people like Troy, kind of introduced a younger generation, young in age. Of course, we got a little older all the time, but Troy came with the appraisal experience and kind of the young buck. They did good. He was a rookie of the year one year.
Only that 1 year, or were there other years?
They only gave it to him.
Only my first year.
You peaked that year, and then nothing happened after that. Yeah, brutal.
All downhill from there, Leo.
Yeah. All downhill.
Yeah.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about that moment. For you, Troy, growing up in a family with real estate around you at all times, was there this sense for you to say, oh, maybe when you're in your teenage years to go, I don't want to have anything to do with real estate. I don't want to sell $15,500 houses. I want to go do something else. What was that like for you? Were you attracted to it immediately watching your dad run this business, or did you want to go do something else in that time of your life?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I always was drawn to something beyond the residential market. And so I enjoyed the commercial market. Dad encouraged me to consider appraisal and commercial appraisal. And so I had interviewed and talked to people while I was in college. I got licensed when I was 18. So when I was home for the summer from college, I would hang around the office and go on tours, and the agents would, give me a hard time, which was good. I was Frank's son. That's, so I had a little chip on my shoulder. I'd be lying to tell you I didn't. And so I did, I really did enjoy getting into commercial appraisal right out of college. And that was instrumental for me for many reasons. So something that really helped me. It was a major pillar to what I've been able to do.
Yeah. And you went down to SPU in Seattle, and I'm sure you wanted to get away from Bellingham for a little while, get a different scene. You come back up, you're in this commercial appraisal world. For those of our viewers and listeners that don't know much about the appraisal world, what is commercial appraising? What do you do in that role, and what's the significance of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would write a report, usually a 50 to 100-page report, basically looking at the income and the sales approach to an income producing property, and tell the bank what it's worth when they lent on the property to the borrower. So they have by law essentially need a appraiser to set a value. So that's what I would do over and over again. And I did that in the greater Seattle, well, really throughout the state of Washington. Commercial appraisals are a different licensing than a residential appraisal or appraiser. You kind of do one or the other, either a residential appraiser or a commercial. You don't tend to do both. So you pick one side or the other. And I chose the commercial side.
So what you're alluding to is that you like numbers, to put it simply. Just a little bit. Maybe it's an obsession. Maybe it's a passion. Maybe it's just a numbers guy.
It's a curse. Those spreadsheets are a curse. Yes,
Blessing
a
and a
lot,
curse,
a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of analysis paralysis sometimes.
Well, and for you coming out of college, seeing the success of your dad's business and the Muljat Group, and looking at these big numbers. I mean, you're coming out of college, you're a college guy, post-college guy, and you're looking at these numbers that are probably 20, 50 million, like huge numbers. What was that like for you? How did you wrap your mind around these numbers, and tell me about that experience?
Yeah, I was with a big firm. I happened to, I was knocking on doors looking for my first job. I came out of into the job market in late 92. So the job market was actually not that good. No one was really hiring, but I was fortunate to knock on enough doors and got my first job really working for one of the largest firms on the West Coast that just does commercial appraisals. And then I was valuing very quickly, my spreadsheet skills got me a gig really helping value the California Public Employees Pension Fund, their assets in the state of Washington. So I would drive around and value, here's Troy, 22, 23, valuing this $50 to $100 million portfolio. So they were just digits, and I was making $1, $2, $3 million errors. And that's a humbling experience. But it was fun, and you become, you start to understand that they're just numbers and they're just digits, and you're solving a lot of math equations. So,
what is that experience like for someone like you that is so successful in what you've done since then? What are those moments like for you? You think that failing is important? It's an important element to success.
Oh yeah. I mean, you learn from your failures. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. A lot of people don't take shots. And so you have to learn from your failures. I mean, those are, when I look back on your career, I mean, it's the failures and the opportunities that maybe you missed or you didn't take, or you screwed up on, where you learn from. So you've got to take those shots. Yeah, that's for sure.
And that's something I hear from both of you guys. That's just this theme with you both, is this diligence, this relentless just drive towards this goal of what you guys want. And I think a lot of it comes down to, Troy, you and I have talked about the lessons that you learned from the fishing industry, right? Tell me a little bit more about that transition from the fishing industry and what you guys have brought over mindset wise. How did you guys start in that industry, or your family, and how did you transition to real estate? And Frank, if you want to dive in on that.
Sure. Well, my dad and uncle were partners in a commercial fishing operation. They were purse seiners. That's about a 58-foot boat and a net, and you would fish in Puget Sound or Southeast Alaska. When I graduated from high school, my dad was pretty entrepreneurial, and he said, "How would you like to run a commercial fishing boat?" And I said, "Oh, sure, no big deal, just a great big boat." So he got a boat for me, and I took 5 of my buddies, and I did that for 6 or 7 years. Quite an experience. Hoona, Ketchikan, Alaska, going up there and commercial fishing, a purse seiner. So, it kind of gets in your blood that you work hard. If you don't work, you don't make any money. I think that's where the drive came, to work hard and from commercial fishing. My dad, as he got older and I got out of the business, wanted to take all of his grandkids fishing with him. So he had a little eye problem, and and couldn't really see at the dark very much. And so I know one time he'd come in to dock his boat and he'd have the kids help him. And he took all his grandkids except the girls. And he wanted to take my 2 girls, but he never made it. And Troy, he'd look at Troy and he'd say, "Would you dock this boat, please? I can't see the dock." And he just was driven to make sure that all of his kids could go out and experience commercial fishing. You remember those days, Troy?
Oh yeah. Gee, those are some of the best memories. Yeah. No, I mean, Dad said it well. I mean, commercial fishing is the true 100% office, Leo. I mean, it's, you've got to catch fish in order to pay the expenses and then hopefully have some profit at the end of the day. So you learn to work hard. Gramps, as we call him, Frank Muljat Sr. He would, we were up at 3 a.m. Fishing started at 5 a.m. We were ready for 2 hours before, and then fishing would stop at 10. We'd unload till about 2 a.m. and then we'd get maybe a half hour of sleep and start again.
What was the environment like up there? The physical environment?
Well, back in those days, you fished pretty much 5-6 days a week. And knowing Southeast Alaska in the summertime, you only got about 3 hours of daylight or darkness, I should
Darkness,
say.
yeah.
Darkness, yeah. And there was some rough weather, but I think the people that fished up in the Bering Sea had a lot worse time than I did. I mean, that was really rough up there. And speaking of fishing, I probably hired 6 or 7 or 8 guys that used to fish in my office. I would always tell they'd be a hard worker, and they were and always have been. So, but there was some rough weather. We just kind of learned to live with it, but nothing like the Bering Sea where these crabbers go and stuff. But
yeah.
So don't do crabbing. That's what you're saying.
I don't do crabbing. You can talk to Jeff Vlasic about that. Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds like it's very interesting because there's this core element of, and obviously there's other industries that I think translate really well. And I think what you guys have looked at from a brokerage standpoint is, what translates well. I mean, someone can say, I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, what tells the tale is really their experience and what industry, right? And so tell me a little bit more for you guys transitioning into the real estate world. Frank earlier, Troy at a later date, having those experiences. And maybe, I mean, obviously it's a different type of difficult. I mean, there's ups and downs in real estate too. Yeah. What are those moments? You have these flashbacks and those moments of, nah, we're just going to lean in and tough it out. This dig our feet in and make this happen.
Well, I think fishing was a background that, like I said, like Troy and I said, it's hard work and you just learn to live with it and you just go. And in the real estate business, it was a little different, as young as I was and Troy was when you got into it. But I got to give you an example of what it was like selling real estate when I started in the first 10 years or so. There was no internet, there were no cell phones. There was no iPhone. We had 2-way radios and no faxes. So you can imagine, here now you get a listing, you put it in there and 15,000 people know it's for sale, but instantly. Well, back then we had MLS books. And actually we started out with 3x5 note cards. That's the only way you can transmit the information. And the local real estate office would produce them. You go pick them up and you put them in your shoebox and you kind of knew the inventory. Then they progressed to MLS books, which were distributed once every 10 days. So they're always outdated when you got them. So you drive around and you'd see a for sale sign. And you'd call on your 2-way radio back to the office. You'd say, hey, I just saw a sign. What is this? They'd call the office and you'd go show it, knock on the door and show it. It was really different. But, there's always changes. Along came the internet. And I had this son that just loved the internet. And before he started appraising, he worked for an internet company, and I'll let him tell that story. And now he made me eat my words.
Actually, in between, early in my career in appraisal, I was always a techie at heart. I always enjoyed technology and such. And so we started a computer newspaper, which failed down in Seattle, another failure. And then I had a buddy who had helped me on that, said, hey, you got to come work for this marketing guy or talk to this marketing guy. And he's this new thing called the internet. And this was in 94. And so we started down a path and pitched the ownership of Windermere on a website. And so I designed up that first idea and concept of what a website would be like. And we were using HTML 0.7 version and Netscape, even before that, Mosaic. And we had no idea what we were doing. Sorry, Windermere. We had no clue what we were doing, but we designed it up. And then I had Dad came down to the boat show because we were boaters. So he came down in December of 94. And I said, you got to come see what we're doing. You know, we're going to put real estate on the internet. And he looked at it and he just said, no one's ever going to buy real estate on a computer, son. Let's go to the boat show.
Yeah, true story.
You know, I mean, the internet, wild frontier. I mean, obviously it has changed everything. So, yeah.
Well, and it's understandable because from Frank's perspective, this is how real estate was done for this really extended period of time. And so when it's been done for that long, you start to think, well, this is how it may be for forever or a long period of time. If I opened up my computer right now, I'd look at it and go, I still don't understand how it works. I don't get it. But what was that like for you, Frank, to have him come to you with this wild idea about how real estate was going to be done?
It was just hard to fathom, that just can't be, Troy. We have an MLS book, and that's the way it is, Don't be telling me how it's going to change.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I bought a fax, and I thought to myself, how can this work? I scanned a piece of paper and faxed it over to Greg Miller at Coldwell Banker. And I called him and I said, Greg, did you get it? He said, yeah. I said, how did you get it? He said, I don't know. It came through the phone line, I guess. I mean, it was just all a new experience. I mean, think about all the technology and how it changed. And that was probably
but you adapted well. I mean, like you were forefront. You were always out there leading in that. You had one of the first brick phones. I mean, we got a picture downstairs with here's Frank. Here's the real estate on a telephone, and he had this big giant brick phone. And you were in the Herald.
He was to weigh 2 or 3 pounds. He had to click this. It was a box about 9 inches by 8 inches, and you'd carry it with you. And I remember the Foy Hogan at Concrete and I were the first ones to get it in Bellingham. And so, yeah, we were in the front.
But, you got to adapt or die, Leo. I mean, that's a huge key to it. And I think Dad's always done that. I think the speed of that has just of adaptation is increasing, of course. And so that's sometimes that's hard to hold on to. So, yeah.
You can have this attachment to how things have been, but you have to break it as quickly as possible to continue evolving, right?
Well, Dad did that with the brokerage industry. I mean, going to 100% shop. I mean, my goodness, I'm sure the other brokers that, were used to taking their 70%. I mean, that was better for the consumer. And that was better for the agent as well. And it helped grow and expand what really became a national trend for many. And that's changed since then a bit, but trendsetter in that fashion with the Muljat Group when it opened over 30 years ago.
And, we had 2-page carbon copied purchase and sale agreements. And of course, Bellingham had its own MLS up here, and there was always the Seattle Northwest MLS that were a lot bigger, but we were a little smaller. And of course, we had a hard time to adapt. But yeah, I remember the 2- and 3-page. And now we have forms. I mean, Leo, gee whiz, I don't know, 20 pages to a purchase and sale. But I remember the writing on the hood of a car and carbon copy and handing it to the buyer and say, here's your copy. And we used to close our own transactions. There was no escrow company. Wow. Yeah, you'd have to do the paperwork, have them come in, and that's come a long ways. Escrow, we couldn't imagine turning it over to some neutral third party to close your transaction, talk to your buyer and seller. Yeah, it was it's full of changes, I'll say.
Yeah. It's that gatekeeper mentality versus a more consumer enabling type of environment, Leo. And something that is a better tool for the consumer is better for the industry. It may be difficult for the professionals going through it, but it is better.
So it's struggling with that balance between wanting to be relevant at every point to understanding that something is just detaching the ego and saying, hey, this is just better for the end user, we have to let it happen. This is the part of this whole transaction that I'm a part of, and that's the way it is, and adapt, right? Hey, it's Leo. We'll be back to the interview in a moment, but if you're new to the Building Bellingham podcast, I wanted to say hello. I'm a local real estate agent with the Cohen Group Northwest, powered by the Muljat Group Realtors. We do real estate differently, and this community podcast is part of it. Check us out by searching Cohen Group NW on your favorite social media platform. And thank you for listening. And now, back to the show. Troy, for you talked about a chip on your shoulder, and I can't see any physical chip there, but you're coming into this industry, and Frank, you're clearly, at this point of success. You're growing this business, you're doing it differently. And Troy, you're Frank's son, and you're coming into it. All the brokers in the office are maybe giving you a hard time, and you're getting into commercial appraising. Tell me about your motivation. Like, you're coming into this and you're thinking, I want to prove them wrong, or I want to prove myself right, or what was your mindset like that coming into this business with that chip on your shoulder? What's that chip like?
What's the chip like? Yeah. Well,
Is it still there?
Sometimes it's weighty. Sometimes it's pretty weighty. And sometimes you don't know it's there. So yeah, I think you're carving out your own niche in the market. And so for me, it was commercial, it was investment stuff. And I think that, you've got something to prove, but I also, I enjoyed what I did. And so you work hard it's not a job when you enjoy it. So for me, I did want to prove things. I wanted to sell large buildings. I wanted to be involved in a lot of stuff that maybe not everybody else was in, selling residential stuff. So that was always appealing to me. And sometimes that chip can get you, you can, you defend your turf a little too much. So and that can sometimes bite you. Other times, you have to do that a bit because of confidentiality, or you're working on a transaction where you have to respect what your buyer and your seller needs at that time. So yeah,
Leo, he was driven, no question. He was one of the youngest guys ever to get his CCIM license, which is a certified commercial investment member, which is in addition to a real estate license and an appraiser's license. He also was a state certified instructor, would go around and teach classes in commercial real estate. Yeah, he was very driven, took a lot of classes. I must admit he's smart. I don't know where he got it. Didn't get it from me.
for on that note with the CCIM, if I know, Troy, you and I have talked about this a lot too, and it's not an easy thing to get. It's a big process. Getting your real estate license, it takes a little bit of time. It's, it's doable. Getting your managing broker's license is another piece. And there's other certifications, but the one that is just I would say, pinnacle, or one of the big checkpoints in a real estate career is that CCIM. Can you explain a little bit more for our viewers what that is and what the process is like to get that?
Yeah, CCIM means commercial certified investment member, and that is a designation through the National Association of Realtors, through their commercial division. And one needs to basically show that they've done a certain amount of transactions, either on a sales side or a lease side. So there's an actual dollar amount you need to do, and then there's an actual amount of deals you need to prove. And then there's a variety of coursework. Each course is usually a week long. I traveled Denver, California, Oregon to take those classes, and they're not cheap, but they're well taught. For 90 to 120 hours, you can get your real estate license. But a CCIM is, really more like a master's degree, if you will, because you are working at it. It can take the average person 4 to 6 years to get if they're really working hard at it. And, for me, it was very beneficial. I had been through an appraisal track, so I was able to fast track that a bit, which helped me get it at an earlier age. But for some, it can be 10 years or more to attain that. And then you pass a long full day exam. You write a comprehensive report and analysis. Yeah, very, very detailed, but again, they hold a level of integrity, of ethics that second to none.
How does this all play into where you are today and the level? You guys both bring so much value to the people that you come in contact with. And for your clients, Troy, they come to you for a reason. And Frank, your clients came and come to you for a reason. How has this all played into being able to spot a deal for a client or connect the dots? How does this all play into that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, understanding the appraisal side and how banks finance properties and how they approve and how they disapprove things was immensely important for me to understand. And doing that over and over again through hundreds of appraisals and talking with bankers, the CCIM really taught me the investment side and how to analyze properties. I was analyzing them through a certain lens, if you will, a banker's lens to a certain extent as an appraiser. But when the CCIM helps you understand it really, to buy your own investment. And that's what a lot of real estate agents don't necessarily do is they go out and they invest on their own accord or create residual income. And that's been beneficial for me as I've developed and created partnerships and built my own projects and properties, and then to help other clients do the same and create essentially passive income through real estate has been something that's been a big part of what I've been able to help many clients do.
It's so different to say, hey, you should buy this house and not own a house. And another thing to say, I own 5 houses and I've been through this 5 times myself personally. And this is what I look for when I buy a house. I mean, it adds a little bit more merit to your suggestions and your guidance. And there was a transition. I'm going to kind of jump into this. There was a transition for you both. Frank, you had been running, the Muljat Group for decades, and you got to this point, and I don't, maybe if it was multiple checkpoints where you said, I think I'm ready to take a little step back. I still want to be involved. Or, I mean, what was that moment like for you? Or was it many moments where you said, hey, I think I think I need to take a little step back from real estate. What was that like for you?
In Troy taking over the business, or
When Troy took over the business? Yeah.
Yeah. How are you going to answer this one?
Yeah.
We don't have enough time for all the discussions that occurred later.
Yeah, it was time. I mean, he's a brilliant young kid. He's developed. He's smart. It was just jump into the future and keep going. I got tired of asking questions about the internet. He just tell me, Dad, reboot it. It was just perfect timing. I mean, with all his knowledge, all his licenses to take over the company, it was just the perfect person. I had been approached several times years before from franchises to, why don't you join us? Why don't you do this? And I don't know, I was just kind of an independent cuss and said, I'm going to keep it independent and see what happens in the future. And really never tried to sell it. Just one day, Troy, we talked and it was a done deal. Yeah.
It happened pretty fast. We had many conversations over years.
Yeah.
And Dad would come and say, well, here's this brand. Here's this brand. You insert any brand name. And they've been in the conference room talking to Dad about, affiliating. And we would have those conversations, Dad and I, or he'd bring me in a couple of times to some of those conversations and we'd explore. And, you learn a lot from your competitors and what other people offer. But I think, there's some pillars, of being independent, but also being impactful, innovating as an independent brokerage is important. And so, maybe it's harder to do that today than ever, but it's also fun to do that.
So you guys, I mean, you held out. I mean, you had probably pretty lucrative offers or big proposals and all these things coming at you. But Frank, tell me more about why did you hold out? I mean, it's clearly worked and there's a reason that it's this way. But in those moments where you're thinking, wow, this looks pretty good, but I'm not going to do it. Was it stubbornness? Was it just the vision? What was it for you in that moment? Was it simple, just a simple decision of, no, I'm going to stick to it?
Yeah. It was probably a little stubbornness. I like the independency and, but like Troy said, you'd meet with people and you'd kind of learn the other side, what they're doing and pros and cons. And, they were picking my brain, but I was also picking their brain, finding out what was happening. And I just couldn't see paying all the franchise fees and all that upfront and stuff. And I don't know. I guess I was stubborn. I really was. Yeah.
Well, it worked. It's working.
Yeah. It is.
I took Dad to the second Inman conference ever. I didn't make the first one, but I took him to the second one in San Fran. I said, we got to go. Come on, come into the 21st century. And so we went down to San Fran and for me, it was kid in the candy store. I think for Dad, it was like, what are these people? Just everybody's got a computer and a gadget and what are MLS book.
Yeah. Let's go back. Let's do it. Brick phone, MLS book. What
Yeah.
we're talking about is branding. I mean, being very, I mean, stubborn is one word, but I think just, sticking to the vision, right? You have this vision of how you think things should be, sticking to it and doing it from a good place. And sometimes it's not more complicated than that. And brand is something that can eventually die, right? But legacy is this next level, right? Legacy is something that lives on, right? And Frank, for you, there's a lot of risk in creating a brand that turns into a legacy. What does the word legacy mean to you guys? What does that mean to have transitioned this to Troy and see this brand live on?
Well, I'm glad Troy took it over because he can worry about the next legacy. It's important, I did a lot of transactions with just a handshake, and I think that was important to me, and it was important to the people I did it with. Just a lot of handshake deals. Your word's good, their word's good. As long as that legacy can continue, that's the way I built a business, I think. A lot of handshakes. With a lot of people. I got a lot of stories about when Ken Imus came into town and how we did a lot of things on a handshake.
And by the way, just a little background on Ken Imus. Can you tell the viewers who Ken Imus is and how important he is to the Bellingham and Fairhaven story?
Well, Ken Imus was a man that lived in Palo Alto, California. He had 2 car dealerships, one in El Paso and one in Palo Alto. And his wife was from Bellingham, and he wanted to come back. He loved antiques, and he wanted to come back to Bellingham and do something. And his wife, Barbara, her parents were still here. And he came back one day, and I was working at Nicholas Jones Company, which is right across the street from where the Leopold Hotel is or was or whatever it's called now. And he walked in, and somehow I got hooked up with him because everybody else in there was 65 years old, and they didn't want to take the time to walk outside and show the property to this guy. So,
He ended up being a pretty good client.
He ended up being a real good client. And I sold him every building in Fairhaven, pretty much everything over there that he owns, I sold him, every vacant piece of land. He bought 80 acres up on the hill on I-5. And then he got all done. He says, I'd like to buy the biggest building in Bellingham. And I said, okay, sure. I'm 26 years old. I can sell it to you. It was the Bellingham Hotel at the time. It actually was a hotel. It was owned by C.D. Stimson Company out of Seattle. And so I wrote them a letter. Of course, they laughed and said, who are you? And who's this guy who wants to buy it? And they said they won't give any information unless they get a $100,000 cashier's check. And so I told him, and Imus says, no problem. So he got a $100,000 cashier's check, sent it down to him. And he says, don't tell him not to cash it, because he says, I got a banker friend and check's no good, really. I learned so much from this guy. I mean, he was a car dealer from day one. And anyway, make a long story short, bought the building, sold to him for $660,000.
Wow.
And, we were $10,000 off, sitting down in their office in Seattle, and the price was $650, and everybody was stubborn. We're sitting at this big, long conference table, all these guys at the other end. It must have been a 15, 20-foot conference table. There was the owner and his accountant and attorneys, and we were over here. Had Ken Imus, myself, his accountant, and his attorney. And Ken Imus was sitting in the middle with a briefcase. And the guy said, no, we won't sell it for $650. And Ken says, well, let me review my notes. And I'm sitting right next to him. He opens up his briefcase, and there's flat nothing in this briefcase. Empty. And he looks at it, and I kind of looked at him, and he says, they don't know it's empty. And he shut it. He says, no, I can't do it. He says, $650, that's it. And so anyway, we all stood up, started leaving. And then he looks at me and he says, don't lose the deal for 10 grand. He says, put that deal together. So anyway, they agreed to 10,000 more. And I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I was 27 years old, 26, I forget. And guy's multi-million-dollar deal, and he's got an empty briefcase, But a lot of stories like that, how he bought the buildings. I don't want to give up. Of course, he's passed away now.
Good stories.
I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of industries have changed where there's even less trust than there used to be. This concept of handshake. I'm a handshake guy. You guys are both handshake guys. What is that concept of handshake? I mean, how important is that? Your word, your hand, giving someone else a handshake.
It's everything. If your word's no good, your reputation's no good. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's changed at all?
Oh, today's world.
Evolution of technology and the internet?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's too bad, but I do. I think it's changed. Yeah. There's still a lot of people out there that you can trust and handshake, and deal's a deal.
It's
Yeah.
rare today, Leo. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
rare, and I think you appreciate it when you see it or witness that type of, integrity. It's just different today. It's not that it's worse or better. It's just different. And we're in a text, email environment where it's easy to send things over, and sometimes just getting face to face with someone, shaking their hand, or COVID compliant shaking their hand.
Elbows, arm bumps, whatever.
And picking up the phone and talking to people. I mean, there's deals to be done, doing that. And so people want to be relational. And so that's been a big part of Dad. I mean, he's got a nickname called Big Smooth. He can smooth out any situation. So
Big Smooth. That's a great nickname.
I can only strive to be a little bit of Big Smooth. I am
Smooth Junior, maybe?
I'm not even Smooth Junior.
Medium-sized Smooth?
I'm not very smooth. That's the problem.
I think Keena came up with that.
I think the only thing I can imagine, just thinking of Big Smooth, top hat, you got a cane, maybe a Cadillac, like a 1960s Cadillac, playing some smooth
Mark
music.
II, I think it was. A Mark II.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually had one?
Cadillac. Yeah, I remember it. 8-track in that thing.
Yeah.
That was a wild guess, but that's exactly what I would imagine Big Smooth would be like. I'm glad you fit the
No top hat.
no top hat. No, fair enough. I
It's
missed that
Bellingham.
piece.
It's Bellingham. It's not that formal.
Troy, you come from an appraising background, which many of the appraisers that I've met are very conservative in how they, you talked about analysis paralysis. You probably got really good at assessing risk really fast. A lot of entrepreneurs that I've seen, you're one of those people that I see, like you can look at the numbers really quickly and then go, yeah, why not? And Frank, same with you with jumping out on your own and sticking to your guns on staying independent. Tell me about risk. How, you guys have do you guys have different risk thresholds, or are they similar? Do they just come, or do they come with experience? Tell me more about risk for you guys.
Risk is making a decision. I mean, I know I bought some land, developed it. I mean, you make a decision to open up an office. A lot of it is just making decisions, sticking with it, living by it, and just doing it. I mean, every time you buy a house, every time I bought something, they found out I was in the real estate business, they'd up the price. So I'd always have to pay more because they thought that I knew something they didn't know, but it's always proven out to be good. But so I think risk is just, I think you just have to be willing to make a decision. You see a lot of people in life, they hem and haw, oh, should I do this? Should I do this? I can't. And they analyze, too much. Just make a decision and go for it.
Trust your gut.
Yeah.
What are some moments like that for you guys? I mean, Troy, I've seen, even just since we've known each other, I see, I mean, you're taking risk, probably daily, some sort of risk, right? And decision, if there was no decision to be had, there's nothing to weigh out. There's no pro and con. There's no decision to be made, right? It's just easy. It's easy to go one way or the other, right? Tell me about some of the risks that you've taken. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably took more risk earlier in my career, more with a little heavier chip on my shoulder, willing to take that risk. And again, you're younger, you're more of a risk taker. So I think that you were talking about the appraiser in me. It can be a more conservative side, and sometimes that appraiser sense is don't take any risk. And then that broker in you is lay it all on the line every day, every minute of every day. So sometimes those don't always equate. And so you got to make a decision. But I always saw past the appraisal part of it. There was always the broker in me that was at the center of the core, and the one wanting to create. The appraisal just taught me how to create the value. And so I was able to use that. I was probably never that good of an appraiser, to be honest with you. I think that the broker in me really came out more in my appraisal than anything. So yeah, taking risk on big projects, taking risk on with clients on deals that I might not get paid on for a year, taking risk building things, going into partnerships, taking a risk by buying a property management company 25 years ago and getting into property management when Dad said, don't do that.
No.
So, which, took me many years of losing money to figure out how to turn that into a business. So
part of risk is seeing something that other people don't see. And a common element in this conversation is both of you have, from founding and starting this company to continuing this legacy, you guys have continuously seen opportunities or a way that things can be done. And there's just a path to get there. You're willing to go through that, the diligence of getting there, but it's this consistent mindset of there's a better thing. I think this is a better way of doing it. I think this can be done differently, and sticking to that. So, I mean, I'm continually impressed with the mindset. I just love the mindset that you guys have. It's infectious, absolutely infectious. And I align with it. So thank you for that. As we kind of wrap this up, let's talk about what's a day in the life. What was a day in the life like for you, Frank? What's a day in the life now? And same, Troy, what's a day in the life for you on just kind of a standard day where you're stuck in feasibility for 24 hours? And
Well, I think back in the days when I was full-time management, when I was in partners with Cal, I mean, I was more the sales manager. And when I opened up my own, I was, of course, the manager, and always constantly giving advice, talking to people, trying to help them make decisions. And then meanwhile, showing property and making decisions for clients, and doing a very busy life, very busy. Today, it's a little more relaxed. But don't get me wrong. I mean, selling real estate or owning a business it's a lot of work. You have to believe in what you do. And of course, first of all, you have to love what you do. And real estate's a great profession. I mean, you meet a lot of people, you make friends, and usually they're happy. They buy a house. So I don't know. I mean, it's no easy task, but if you like what you're doing, it's easy.
And you still found a way to make time for family. How important is family to you?
Real important. Yeah, real important. I mean, I've got 3 kids. Troy's the oldest, and I got 2 girls and 11 grandkids. So last few years have been real busy just doing things with grandkids. Then I like to travel a little bit. So yeah, family life is everything. It is. And that's probably hard when you're a real estate salesman, because every time you want to go somewhere, somebody wants to buy a house, you always have a tough pull there. What do I do? Where do I go? How do I keep in touch? So the internet's helped that, but it's a great business.
The two-way radio probably didn't help going on vacation. There was probably a distance limit.
You can't imagine what it was like to have a 2-way radio. That was really
I loved, as a kid, I loved hearing, what are they saying? What are they doing? They had this code too. I mean, they were good on this code. I mean, they had their own little way of, is this thing for sale? Do I have a hot one on? Do I, what do I got going on here? So I enjoyed listening to those conversations when I'd get into that Cadillac.
Yeah,
So,
that was a Lincoln.
Lincoln.
Yeah. The real 2-way radio deal was the boys at Sudden Valley.
Oh, yeah.
And, there are 3 or 4 major people out there. Ron Bazard, who's Lori Reese's dad, Doug Gray, Roger Ufkus were the main 3 ones. And fortunately, they were all clients of mine. I'd go out there at Sudden Valley and they'd be pitching how to sell property out there, then I'd be selling them property. So they were my best clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were absolutely my best
The
clients.
broker's broker.
Yeah. And, but they had the 2-way radio down pat, those guys. Yeah.
Frank, did you ever end your transmissions with big smooth out?
No, that didn't come until I don't know. I think Keena came up with Big Smooth. I don't know, or Kent Thomas. I don't know, maybe Troy. Between the 3 of them.
So we'll give Keena credit for the big smooth nickname. And Troy, we're going to talk a little bit about your day. Every once in a while, you and I cross paths in a day. What's your day like? What's a crazy day for you? What's a normal day for you? What's that like?
Well, I start early, so my days start really early, and I that's my best time is in the morning, and then by mid-morning and early, or just before noon, my most productive time has occurred. By 3 o'clock, I'm usually transitioning out back to family or home. So that's in general my day. If you asked Heather, she says I probably work more today than ever. I think that I don't, but maybe that's just because I love what I do. So yeah, I start early, and I am, I detail everything on my calendar. everything has to have a color. It's color coded, and I can quickly scan my day, my week, my month, and know where my time has been spent or where I'm going to spend it. And so I live and die by that. And, surrounding yourself with really good people that you can trust, that can help you, assist you, that are smarter than you, is also really crucial and allows you freedoms to be able to have that necessary space that you need to dream, to adapt, to look to the future.
And have a personal life. I think many realtors that, if they're watching this or hear personal life, I think a lot of people are probably wondering where that is right now, but it's
no open houses in commercial. So that's I've had my weekends for decades. So yeah.
Oh, interesting. That might be my next transition. I see. Yeah. I just wanted to thank you both. I mean, you guys have done so much for this community, and I just wanted to say thank you for your time and what you've done, Frank and Troy, for this industry, this local community, this local industry. Troy, you've been on KGMI, you've been on the Herald. I mean, thank you for being such an amazing local resource for people that want to understand real estate and just understand investing. So
having us on the show.
Absolutely. And I think what we've learned is that you need a nickname. We need to get you a nickname.
I'm good.
Fans, people in Bellingham, and everyone in Whatcom County, thanks for watching. This was another fun season. We love what we do, and we really appreciate it. Even if we don't know who's out there listening to it, we appreciate everyone who's supported this dream to give local entrepreneurs and business owners and community leaders a platform to talk about their business and their story and their failures and successes. So this is season 2. We're super excited. Thank you so much for listening and being supportive of this. And we're looking forward to another season next year. But what a way to cap it off with Frank and Troy Muljat, local legacy here. And if anybody has any questions about building Bellingham, we are here. We're open. We are about Bellingham. So thanks again for listening.
Building Bellingham is a community podcast exploring leadership, challenges, failures, and business with entrepreneurs right here in Bellingham, Washington. You can watch interviews live and be the first to hear about upcoming guests on the Building Bellingham Facebook and Instagram pages. Again, I'm your host, Leo Cohen of the Cohen Group Northwest. This episode was produced and edited by Cooper Hansley and Tiffany Holden. Our logo was designed by Sam Vogt. To learn more about the team behind the podcast, search Cohen Group NW on Google, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn.